super cop made friends, solves crimes, and even plays piano for the old folks.
Enough about this dog man. It's time to stop this super cop. He's not going to ruin my evil plans to destroy all do-gooders.
How evil can one cat be?
Pretty evil!
This week on Talking About the Movies from the same mind that gave us Captain Underpants, we have the story about a boy and his dog. Except that the boy has become a man and the man has no longer got a head and instead he's got a dog head. It's about as crazy as you get, as we're going to talk about DreamWorks' latest animated feature, the feature film adaptation of Dogman. Plus,
there's a customer hoping for a word with you. Bring him.
Michelle Yeoh's character from Star Trek Discovery gets her own solo movie in Star Trek Section 31, which is available to watch on Paramount Plus. Is it worth streaming? We'll talk about it. It's a double feature this week on Talking About the Movies. And welcome to Talking About the Movies, as we continue to celebrate 20 years of talking about the biggest new releases of the weekend. And this weekend is no exception, as we'll take a look at Dogman, plus we'll also take a look at last week's big new release on Paramount Plus, Star Trek Section 31. I'll just tell you right now, one of those movies is a contender right now for the worst movie of the year. The other is a very good fun time. I'll leave you to decide on what that is, or you can just go ahead and skip ahead to when I get my reviews. But with all that said, let's go ahead and talk about the biggest new release of the weekend, and that is, of course, DreamWorks' Dogman. So, of course, Dogman is based off of Dave Pilkey's best-selling books of the same name. They're a spin-off kind of Captain Underpants. If you ever saw the Captain Underpants movies or read the Captain Underpants books, there's a lot of very much of the similar influences, the same artistic style in this movie. In fact, characters from Captain Underpants show up in this movie. In fact, Harold shows up in this movie, voiced by a completely different actor than he did in the first epic movie. But I'll do more to that as we go along here. But in the film, you have the story of this cop and his dog, who are the cop is not the brightest person on the force, and the dog is the very smartest person on the force. So they get involved into this incident where they have to defuse a bomb and it explodes. It basically kills the cop off, and the dog is still alive even though his body is completely gone. And so these doctors have a crazy idea to attach the dog's head onto the man's body, and thus, lo and behold, Dogman is bored in probably the most sweet but also very, very sadistic way of realizing that origin story to come onto the big screen. I mean, yeah, when you really think about it, this is a very fucked up body horror story about this, this ordinary guy who all of a sudden now has the body has this head of a dog, but the rest of his body is still intact except his face and his head. But that's only a little bit of the craziness that comes out of this movie. This movie is balls to the wall insane. Like, this is a much more insane movie than something like the Captain Underpants movie, which is hard to believe that a movie about a superhero who, this character who's basically just a superhero who wears nothing but underpants is much more restrained than a movie about a dog cop. But then when you really dig deep into it, you realize that, yeah, this is a much more effed up story than you probably would expect it to be. But does that take away from the enjoyment factor of the movie? No, it does not. In fact, far from it. I would dare go as far as to say that the craziness actually benefits the movie in a large way, because, man, this was such a really good, fun time all across the board. Now, I am not a Dogman expert by any means necessary, but as I said before, I did love the Captain Underpants books when I was a kid growing up. Those are the books I read. I really liked the DreamWorks animated movie that came out in 2017, a criminally underrated movie that had the unfortunate dishonor of opening on the same day as Wonder Woman. Thank you, 20th Century Fox, for giving that movie, a great DreamWorks animated movie, such a terrible release date, but you gave your terrible movie, The Boss Baby, the best possible release date ever, putting it out in March of that year. So yeah, you can thank them for that. But I'm glad they didn't steer away from the other Dave Pilkey projects, because we have this movie here where, like I said, I don't know too much about these books overall. I've never read these books. I don't know much about the characters as a whole. So I'm really going into this very new. I'm just going off of the film, and yeah, it's a very good Cliff Notes version of how this character came to be, how these two became out, him and this cat became enemies, and how the dog is. In fact, a lot of this stuff I don't even know is actually in the book, in terms of like the cop played by Lil Rel Holley, who's like kind of the man in charge now for Dogman in here. But yeah, there's just so much going on in this movie that a lot of it works in the favor of the movie. The rest of it, though, can be very, very questionable, if you will. There's a lot of stuff in this movie. There's way too much going on. It's frenzied, over the top chaos, but a lot of that frenzied, over the top chaos works pretty well. The animation is really good in this movie. Even though I would say of the two movies, Captain Underpants I think is the better overall animated film, but with the style they're going with here, they're going with more of a little bit of what we're used to now with the Spider-Man movies. And I believe this is the same company that also did the SpongeBob animated movies, the ones for the most recent one, like, what was the last one? Sponge on the Run, I think it was. But if I remember correctly, this is done by Micros Animation. In fact, let me do some research here. They also did Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The last Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, Mutant Mayhem, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check just to make sure. I was right. They did Captain Underpants. They did the SpongeBob movie. They did Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. They even did a lot. They even done stuff like, the Paw Patrol movies. They recently did the Tiger's Apprentice. They've done a lot of stuff that you pretty much have very much seen overall. And I thought Jellyfish Pictures was the same company that worked on SpongeBob SquarePants, but no, it's not them. But this is a company that also has worked on stuff like Doctor Who. They did the How to Train Your Dragon special, the Homecoming Holiday special that came out after the third movie. So they have done a lot of stuff that you're very much familiar with, and they do a pretty good job of creating this slick, stylized, kind of Spider-Verse-esque animation that actually plays very well to the film's advantage overall. The film overall is a real good time. It's a real breeze of a movie, too. It's only an hour and a half long, but they cram a lot in there. And ordinarily, the cluttered mess of a movie could really hurt the film in the long run, but luckily, it doesn't do that here. They do a really good job of keeping you invested all throughout the course of the movie, and not only with the zany comedy that they have, because there's a lot of it, but there's even a lot of good emotional moments. There's a lot of great moments where the film takes a break, like moments when the dog has to go back to this house, and he thinks he's going to go back to the wife of the cop again, but no. As soon as this accident happens, the wife of his former owner decides to go ahead and leave, and she never comes back. That's what I love about this movie too. Is also that people will come and go, and their stories will never get mentioned whatsoever. There's a point in the movie where they introduce the villain, the sort of villain, Little Petey's father, Petey's grandfather, who's played by Stephen Root. I didn't know it was him until after I saw the movie, and yeah, I mean, now that I've heard it, now that I know that it's him, I could definitely hear his voice in that. Like, he shows up and then just leaves at the end. Like, he never comes back again. Like, I love the fact that this movie is as willing to say, yeah, we're going to introduce all these different pieces all together, but we're not going to do anything with them whatsoever. The mayor, you think she's going to be a major plot in the movie. Like, she's going to be like a sub-villain or something like that. But no, she's mentioned a couple times, but then she's never mentioned ever again. And even then, she's not really there to do all that much except to just yell at, Dogman and the cop played by Lil Rel Holley. Everybody in the voice cast does very well. I like Lil Rel Holley as the chief of police. Isla Fisher is very good playing the news reporter that's always following them around. And, she's literally a person who is doing nothing but covering whatever Dogman is doing. Like, whenever he's in the news, like he's fighting Petey or trying to find his little Petey, or trying to find like different or just something in general. Like, that's the main focus of her news in this movie, like the news network that she works for. And in this time in this day and age, that's probably the best form of news that we kind of need right now, instead of focusing what's going on in the real world. At least that's what I think it should be. But really, one of the highlights of the movie really is Petey, who's played brilliantly and very well by Pete Davidson. Now, Pete Davidson started his career off pretty good on Saturday Night Live. He had a couple movies here and there that weren't as successful or as popular as I think he was expecting him to. The King of Staten Island is one of those movies where I was really looking forward to seeing what he'd do as an actor, and that's one of the few Judd Apatow movies I really don't like of his as a director. And Pete Davidson's trying his best with that movie, but it wasn't enough to really save it, to really save that film. But here, he steals the show. He is absolutely hilarious as Petey in this movie. Like, he's a villain, kind of, but he's also kind of seen as kind of like a, I mean, what's the type of word here? He's kind of, I don't want to say, he's kind of like the bad guys in a way, which I'll delve more into the bad guys because they had something in this movie when I went to see it. But like they say they're the bad guys, but they're kind of good guys on the side too. And there's a little bit when he gets involved with little Petey, he basically makes a clone of himself, and he thinks he's going to get another version of himself, but then he opens the clone machine he buys, and it turns out it's a little kitten, and it says on the instructions, like, step 1, do this, step 2, step that, and when he gets to step 4, it's just like, wait 18 years for maturity to take over, and he's just like, 18 years? No! And he's just like, there is an undo button, sold separately, and it's this really funny bit, a lot of really funny bits in here, but Pete Davidson in this movie is pretty damn awesome, and he kind of steals the movie away from Dogman. I mean, Dogman is the title, but kind of like with stuff like the Lorax or the Tom and Jerry movie, Dogman's kind of a secondary character in his own movie. However, unlike those movies, this one works because the stuff that they're showing around Dogman is really, really good. Like, Ricky Gervais plays a fish who decides to become the villain in the movie and basically decides to get rid of all do-gooders. But, you think you're going to get rid of everybody in the town, but no. It's basically little Petey who's the only good do-gooder in the town, and like, it leads to a climax at the end, which, it's a nice little climax. It's not your typical kids movie climax. There is actually kind of a nice little message there about, being good, about how you can change a villain or change a person's identity with just the simplest of things. And the way they do it here is actually really, really good. I actually like what they did there with this. I guess if there's any real nitpicky things I would say about the film, they're really nitpicky things. Like I said, Dogman's kind of a secondary character in his own movie, and that could be a problem, like what it was with the Lorax and Tom and Jerry. But like I said, in those movies, I'm talking about the 90s Tom and Jerry movie, not the 2021 one. Even the 2021 one, Tom and Jerry were the best things about that movie. The human characters are not that great. But I can throw that in there as well. With the problem with those movies is that the things that were around these characters were not that great whatsoever. But here, there's at least a lot of fun elements they're bringing to the table with here. The jokes are working very well. The animation is really high frequency and more frequent and more. And then again, you have a guy like Peter Hastings who did one of my favorite shows as a kid growing up, and that was Animaniacs, and also worked on Pinky and the Brain and Pinky Elmira and the Brain. Also has done a lot of stuff for DreamWorks as well. He did the animated Captain Underpants series that came out after the movie did. So they got a good guy here to really bring the story to life and make it work as well as it does. And it does work very well. What I like about this movie also is that it starts off with a short film with the guys from The Bad Guys, because they have a movie coming out in August, the sequel to The Bad Guys 2. And so they throw on this short called, I think it's called Little Lies and Alibis. And in it, they're going to their parole meeting with their parole officer, and they think that and they try to tell the story about how they're late, and they're like 12 minutes late at first, and then as you watch the short go on, they keep going for about an hour, and so they go off on these crazy little there's like this storyline of how they got stuck in the situation, and they set everything up pretty well, and they do explain it pretty well too. It reminded me a lot of this Tex Avery cartoon back in the day, where this guy is going into heaven, and he talks very literally. Like, he'll say something about, like, I have a silver spoon in my mouth, and the heavenly angels are just like, silver spoon in your mouth? Yeah, silver spoon in my mouth. And this one is, and then there'll be a part where it's just like, what's the matter? Cat got your tongue? And then they cut away to a cat, and it's just like, it's literally a cat that got its tongue. I'm trying to remember what that was, because it's a great cartoon. I'm trying to remember what it was. Give me 1 second. Symphony in Slang is what it's called. It's a brilliant Tex Avery cartoon. Definitely check that out. And that's what it reminded me of when I was watching this, because they're literally explaining everything that happened as they're going off talking about why they're late and all that. And it ends with a brilliant payoff that I will not spoil whatsoever. But the point is that, the thing is that they go on for, one of the things is that they go on for like 40 minutes after they're supposed to be there. But the payoff at the end is absolutely hilarious. And I'm not going to spoil it, because when it happened in the movie theater, I actually laughed pretty hard at how they is at that, because it's something you expect when you give it some time and think about it. But when you listen to it go on and you think, well, okay, what's the payoff going to be? Yeah, that got me the first time around. I mean, you might figure it out early on yourself, but honestly, when that happened, I was just like, okay, that was really good. I got to give him credit for the way that ended. Like I said, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it's definitely worth getting there early for it. I gotta say, the trailers that came with this kind of were a little bit underwhelming to me. Like, I think the only one that they showed that I was kind of at least somewhat interested in seeing was Elio, the new Pixar movie. And then they showed Lilo and Stitch, which I'll admit, seeing Stitch on the big screen, a live action Stitch on that big Cinemark XD screen, like, I love how he looks even fluffier, like looks even more cute and fluffier to take from Despicable Me. Like, he looks much more cute, adorable on the big screen. And like I said before, if anything is going to save that movie, it's going to be watching Lilo and Stitch. Is watching Stitch on the big screen like that. Like, even if the movie is terrible, as long as Stitch looks good, I'll probably still have a good time with it overall. But then after that, I think what else was there? There was The King of Kings, which is the Angel Studios animated movie, and one of the most laurel-filled trailer ever. Like, you see the voice actors, and then on top of them, it's just like Emmy winner Forrest Whitaker, or Golden Globe nominee Oscar Isaac, Academy Award winner Ben Kingsley, like that type of stuff. And it's just like, yeah, there's more laurels on that than there are laurels in actual movies for awards contenders. And they also showed a Paddington Peru trailer, which is like a special Dogman type of trailer, because it starts off with the Dogman text and then goes right into the Paddington trailer. I don't know. I was kind of waiting for, of course, the big animated movie coming out at the end of the month, the Looney Tunes movie, The Day the Earth Blew Up. Not only that, but what's another animated movie that's coming up that I thought we'd see a trailer for? Actually, no. I think that would have been it. Like, because we got Elio, we got Lilo and Stitch, we got The King of Kings, Paddington and Peru. And then they showed the live-action How to Train Your Dragon trailer, which on the big screen, yeah, it still does not look that good to me. Like, I don't know. Like, I love the How to Train Your Dragon movies. I love the character of Toothless, but I don't know. It still feels like a wash, rinse, repeat of the original movie. I'm hoping that that's not the case, and that's just a way to sucker people in. But it feels like a movie that they're promoting the Epic Universe theme park with. In fact, we actually got an Epic Universe commercial before the movie actually started. So I think that's probably the reason why that How to Train Your Dragon movie is getting made. But yeah, the kids trailers coming up have been a little bit underwhelming for this particular movie that I was at. But like I said, in terms of Dogman overall, it's a very good, fun movie. Is it one of the best DreamWorks animated movies? No, but it does continue to prove that they're back on that hot streak after being down with a couple of lesser movies in general. But, Kung Fu Panda 4, Orion in the Dark, Wild Robot, and now this movie, they're back, man. They're back in full force. And I at least hope the How to Train Your Dragon movie is not a step backwards for them, or the Gabby's Dollhouse movie. But Bad Guys 2 looks pretty good, so I'm definitely looking forward to checking that out. But overall, I really enjoyed Dogman. I think it's a really good, fun time. Even if you never read the books that these are based off of, if you go into it knowing what it is and knowing how chaotic it's going to be, if you like the old stuff like Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain, I think you're going to have a great, fun time all across the board. Kids will definitely be more invested into it than the adults will, but I had a good time watching it overall. Definitely not as good as Captain Underpants, but I still give this movie a big thumbs up. I think it's a really good, fun time overall. Definitely check it out, Dogman. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the second film I want to delve into here. The lesser of the two movies, if you will, and one you could watch at home, but please don't. This is Star Trek Section 31. So Star Trek Section 31 is based off of the Star Trek Discovery TV series. In fact, one of the characters from that show, Michelle Yeoh, who's of course gone on to become an Academy Award-winning actress for Everything Everywhere All at Once, she reprises her role in this movie, and it follows her as she works with Section 31, a secret division of Starfleet tasked with protecting the United Federation of Planets, and must face the sins of her past. And I don't really talk about it here on this channel, but I do like Star Trek overall. I actually do like more of the movies and the TV shows than I let on. I mean, I came to it very late. I think I started watching it with, of all things, Star Trek Generations. That was my kind of introduction to the Star Trek world, seeing, James T. Kirk and Captain Jean-Luc Picard meeting in that movie, even though that movie was definitely a major disappointment for Star Trek fans because they kind of expected a lot more from that film. But that was my introduction to Star Trek as a whole, and then slowly but surely the movies came into play, then the TV shows. They actually started re-airing the TV shows in like 2006, quite after the DVDs first came out for the first time, of the remastered versions, and of course, that followed up with Star Trek The Next Generation, and then the J.J. Abrams movies was my real full introduction to me getting fully invested into Star Trek as a whole. And when Paramount Plus started doing all the Star Trek shows on there, I kind of like with the Star Wars shows on Disney. I never had a real problem with any of the Star Trek shows on there. I mean, most of the shows that they had on there I thought were actually kind of good. I did like Star Trek Discovery. I liked Strange New Worlds. Lower Decks was actually really damn good. I was actually surprised how much I enjoyed that one. Picard is probably a mixed bag overall, and so I've never really had anything of Star Trek from the Star Trek in the Alex Kurtzman Star Trek universe that he's had that I didn't like. I like Star Trek Prodigy too, the animated show they did for Nickelodeon, but of course here you have the first made-for-TV movie, well, technically streaming movie for Paramount Plus of the Star Trek world, and the 14th film overall. And based off a character who I thought could have actually had a lot more fun to work with here, because Michelle Yeoh is such a great actress, and she's proven time and time again about how, game she's in for anything. So it pains me to finally say that, yes, ladies and gentlemen, there is actually a Star Trek property that I did not enjoy, especially from the Alex Kurtzman Star Trek universe, because, man, this movie is not only bad, this is probably worst movie of the year territory. And it's amazing how, last year we just had three bad worst movies out of the gate, like, Mean Girls, Night Swim, Lift, Bang Bang Boom. It didn't take us less than a week to get into the worst movies of last year. But this year we're not getting to it until about 3-4 weeks into the new year, which is, I don't know if that's a good sign going forward or not, but I just found that kind of interesting that last year we had so many bad movies in the month of January, and then, just this, this is the first real one I could say, this is worst movie of the year territory, because, yeah, this is pretty bad. It's pretty bad because, not because of Michelle Yeoh. I mean, Michelle Yeoh she's doing everything that she can to save the movie. I mean, she really is the strongest part of the film overall. Like, she's the one who's going in on this. She's game all the way, but everything else about the movie is just so bad. Like, this is a terrible, terrible movie. Like, this is not even a fun movie overall. This is a film that is just so badly put together. This is just a sloppy film overall. And I couldn't figure out what was the reason why it failed. Well, there's two reasons, actually. And one is pretty obvious once you know who the director of this movie is, Olutanu Usunsami. Now, that name may not sound familiar because, they've done some Star Trek work before, but no, this is the same director that gave us The Fourth Kind. Remember that Paranormal Activity knockoff movie that came out just a few weeks after Paranormal Activity with Milla Jovovich? Yeah, that's that same person, and that should have been the first warning sign right there that this movie probably was not going to do very well. Like I said, even though, like I said, he had directed Star Trek Discovery episodes, and I guess he did pretty good on those. But speaking of television shows, you won't believe what this was originally supposed to be. This was supposed to be a Star Trek Discovery spin-off series, but COVID-19 happened, and that basically forced them to redevelop this movie into a film. So it's basically taking the Moana 2 route of just, trimming down ideas from a television series and just chopping it down into a lackluster sequel, except with the case of with Moana 2, it's pretty blatant and obvious why they were doing it, because Disney was losing money with the 2023 releases, and they had to make money for the holiday season, and that's how Moana 2 came to be. With Star Trek Section 31, I give them a little bit more leeway because of the fact that this was done during COVID-19 and they realized that they couldn't do it, so they basically had to redevelop it into a film. Into a film. I give them a little bit more of a free range on this movie because of the fact that this isn't a movie that they're highly touting as a Moana sequel. Like, Moana 2 was supposed to be the sequel to Moana, even though it was originally the original scripts were intended to be a television series on Disney Plus, and I have more problem with that than I do with this film in general. But even with all that said, though, like, you can't really convince people that this is supposed to be a movie, even though it was supposed to be a television series, and expect it to work. And yeah, I don't care if it is streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus and all that. It's still not a good sign going for the movie going forward. And yeah, the film suffers big time because of it. Even though they have a lot of good names in here, Omari Hardwick, Sam Richardson, and I mean, it's not even trying to be for. It's not that it's not even trying. They are trying, but they're not trying hard enough to make this a coherent plot that can stand an entire movie. This is a film that's just a little over 90 minutes long, and it just feels like it's dragging on and on and on and on. It just never gets going when it needs to, and the film just really suffers because of it. And it's just such a cluttered mess all across the board. And it's a shame because there was a lot of good ideas being set up, and the trailers look pretty promising for it. But like I said before, it's the fact that it was originally a television series that had to be trimmed down into a movie. It's another one of those examples where they just didn't do a good job of, cutting it down to make it seem like a coherent feature film, like actually trying to make it a feature film. It literally feels like a movie that was supposed to be the pilot episode for a television series, but they realized that we're supposed to trim down these scripts into one feature-length film. And yeah, it just didn't work overall. And yeah, it's a mess of a film. Like I said, I've liked a lot of what they've done with Star Trek on the Paramount Plus, but this is the first real bad thing about it that even the Star Trek fans are looking at it and going like, yeah, this movie sucks, and we can't even say it's that good overall. There's a lack of the development of the characters isn't that great. Michelle Yeoh's performance, as much as it saves the film, it's being wasted on a film like this. The cast overall really isn't that interesting because the characters aren't that interesting, and there are times when it's trying way too hard to go into Guardians of the Galaxy territory. I mean, we already had one bad Guardians of the Galaxy knockoff with Borderlands last year. We don't need another one. We don't need to go down the David Ayer Suicide Squad route either. So, and yeah, I wish there was something I could say about the film that's worth it. Like I said, Michelle Yeoh's given it her all, but even then, it's not enough to save the film overall. So yeah, Star Trek Section 31. It's a bad movie, so you know where my thumb is going. Thumbs down. Avoid this one like the plague, please. So yeah, there you go. That is Star Trek Section 31. But with all that said, let me know your thoughts down below. What did you think of Dogman? What did you think of Star Trek Section 31? I would really like to know. Let me know in the comments down below. Next week, we'll take a look at Love Hurts, the new action comedy with Ki-Hu Kwan and Ariana DeBose, produced by the same guys that did Violent Night and Hardcore Henry and John Wick. And it's a movie I'm really looking forward to checking out. I might try to also go and see Companion, the new Zach Cregger produced film. I didn't get to see it this week. But I'm pretty sure it's going to be there next week overall. So maybe I might have time to go sneak that one in. If not, I'll definitely have it later on for a review on the website later in the year. But yeah, with all that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please go ahead and check out the last video I did where I looked at what Flight Risk, and also what came out last week. Wallace and Gromit for Vengeance Most Foul. Well, that came out at the beginning of the year, but if you want to go check that video out, please go ahead and check that out there. Check it out, the playlist as well. Hit the like button, subscribe button, notification, and the bell if you like what you see. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. So until then, thanks for watching. I'll see you next week. Take care.